Good evening, and welcome to today's presentation of the Elon University Medal for Entrepreneurial Leadership. We are delighted that Mr. Julian has accepted our invitation, and we look forward to hearing him speak. Entrepreneurship education at Elon is based on the recognition of two facts. One, we can teach you to think like an entrepreneur, and two, very few undergraduates actually start a business upon graduation. In fact, research from the Kauffman Foundation shows that the median age of an entrepreneur in the United States is 40 years. And further, 95% of them have bachelor's degrees and 47% have advanced degrees. We've decided to focus instead on developing an entrepreneurial mindset among our students. We seek to develop such skills as identifying opportunities, solving problems, dealing with ambiguity, and leading through persuasion. Our entrepreneurship curriculum is based on drawing students from the many majors and minors at Elon University. The curriculum is supported by our entrepreneurship living learning communities and student organizations such as Enactus, which focuses on the power of entrepreneurial action to improve the quality of life and standard of living for people in need. Recognizing that what entrepreneurship programs lack is sound pedagogy, we will infuse design thinking into our co-curricular activities, which are managed through our Doherty Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, which focuses on developing entrepreneurial thinking through focus on practice. The center is named in honor of our benefactors, John and Ed Doherty, parents of 2007 alumna, Kerry Doherty. Mr. Doherty is chairman and CEO of Doherty Enterprises, which owns and operates 144 restaurants in New York, New Jersey, Florida, and Georgia, including such brand names as Applebee's, Panera Bread, Chevy's Fresh Mex, and Noodles & Company, among several others. The company is now the 12th largest franchisee and the 100th largest restaurant organization in the country. Ed and John Doherty are committed to giving back to the communities where they do business and to causes that they are committed to. And we are fortunate that Elon University's continued success is a cause to which they are committed. I request you all to join me in thanking Ed and John Doherty for their continued support. I also want to recognize the director of the Doherty Center, Dr. Kevin O'Mara, for whom this is the last Doherty Center ceremony. He will be leaving Elon University after 26 years of dedicated service to become Dean of Campbell University's Business School. Kevin took over the directorship on my request and immediately went about giving the center much-needed direction. Working tirelessly, he has taken the Doherty Center to new heights. I thank Kevin for his outstanding leadership and wish him the very best in the years ahead. I now turn the program over to Senior Finance and Entrepreneurship Major, Laura Orr, and following her remarks, President Lambert will award the medal to Mr. Julian. After Mr. Julian speaks, Kevin O'Mara will facilitate a question and answer session and offer concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Tadapalli. Good evening, and thank you so much for coming. It is an honor and privilege to welcome Mr. Alexander Julian to Elon University. Mr. Julian's success as a designer and entrepreneur can be attributed to his ability to combine creative passion with business acumen. During his career, Mr. Julian has won every major award for design. But for a native North Carolinian, one honor is particularly exciting. In 1990, he received a phone call from legendary UNC basketball coach, Dean Smith. Coach Smith asked Mr. Julian to redesign Carolina's uniforms, and in 1992, the Argyle design was instituted as the official uniform for all Tar Heel sports. As a North Carolina native myself, I grew up bleeding Wolfpack red. At the age of 4, my grandfather taught me the ABCs of sports. Anybody but Carolina. However, he also taught me another valuable lesson. When a North Carolina team is in the NCAA tournament, always pull for your home state, which may be the only way you get an NC State fan to cheer for Carolina. So even though they lost the national title a few weeks ago, it wasn't for lack of cheering or for lack of some really great uniforms, courtesy of Mr. Julian. As I near graduation, I have been reflecting on what I have learned over the past 4 years. As a sophomore, I wrote in reference to entrepreneurship that imagination is the key to addressing some of the world's biggest challenges, and at the very least, it can make it a more efficient and aesthetically pleasing place to live. Mr. Julian encompasses that sentiment, as well as the purpose behind the Medal for Entrepreneurial Leadership, which is awarded to a leader who exemplifies the values of integrity, innovation, and creativity. At this time, please join me in welcoming President Lambert, who will present Mr. Julian with the Elon Medal for Entrepreneurial Leadership.
Alex, it is my great pleasure to bestow on you the Elon University Medal for Entrepreneurial Leadership.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
Very much so. Appreciate that.
We're proud of you. Thank you for being here. Please go right ahead.
Thank you. This is is my mic on? Can you hear me? You can? Good. This is a tremendous honor, and I thank you all very much. And don't dim the lights quite yet, because I want to talk for a minute. I need to see what my notes were here. I'm very honored to be here, and thank you all for joining us. This opportunity gave me a chance to reflect on my my life and the word entrepreneurship and what that means. And I thought of something that I really hadn't thought about in a long time. Do any of you know of a camp called Camp Seagull down in eastern North Carolina? Well, ahoy there. I was a camper there for 5 years. And I think that's the first example of entrepreneurship that I can go back to. Because I remembered that I used to have my parents, who were pretty spoiling, send me an entire box of Bazooka bubblegum at a time, and I used it to pay other kids to make my bed and do my and do my chores for me. I opened my first business when I was 21 years old in Chapel Hill. I opened a store which appropriately was called Alexander's Ambition. You know, it was pure emotion. It was pure. I opened the store, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but it's true. I opened the store with my father's money when he was out of town. He owned a building on Franklin Street where our store is today, and I let a tenant out of a 5-year lease to get the space. I was disinherited that time for 3 days, which was the longest of any of the things that I did. But it turned out to be a very important part of my career because I got to experiment in ways that I would have not had the opportunity to learn from before. I have been involved in somewhere between, I couldn't do the exact count because I didn't have time, because I've got 5 new startups that we're working on right now. But I've been involved in somewhere between 35 and 40 startups, not counting the ones that we're working on right now. And I will talk a little more about that in a second, but I really shouldn't be here to accept an award for entrepreneurship. I'm not great at running a business. What I'm good at is ideation and coming up with the ideas, designing things is my specialty, and I have spent my time trying to figure out all sorts of new ways to do all sorts of new things. I came up with an idea that I think is spectacular, perhaps sparked by knowing I was going to be here speaking tonight, but I woke up at 5 o'clock this morning and had this idea and got up and started Googling to see if anybody else had the same idea, and they haven't. So I can't tell you what it is, but Buckminster Fuller, if you don't know who he is, you should study him. Buckminster Fuller once said, "Design is the comprehensive, anticipatory substance necessary to be enlightened visionaries." That's a lot of big words, but it really is. Design is the comprehensive, anticipatory substance necessary to be enlightened visionaries. My great friend, rest in peace, Niels Diffrient, who was a friend of Bucky's and studied under him, said it more simply in his very important book called Confessions of a Generalist. And he described creativity and design as unthought ways to meet unexpected needs. Think about that. Einstein once was quoted to say that creativity is more important than knowledge. If I had to weigh the two, I would, of course, say that I agree with him, but I think that what great schools like this provide you is the opportunity to have both, and that's the ultimate. I want to take you through some of these slides. This was at an art gallery in New York, which was the second venue for my 30-year anniversary of my design work about eight years ago, Meg? 2006. Okay, I'm sorry, it was 10 years ago. My goodness, time flies. And the idea, what I did is I took my favorite yarn strings, which are my best friends, and we photographed them and blew them up and put them up on the wall, and then put this 40-foot metal pole with men's and women's clothes, which is where I started, in the whole spectrum, showing that, I mean, people have predetermined notions of what I stand for based on what they've seen. And, you know, I got my reputation as a colorist, not for the right-hand section of that photo, but somewhere to the middle left. You know, it was olive, taupe, and gray, but they were special shades of olive, taupe, and gray, and they were done in unusual materials, and the things worked out well together. This is from a TED Talk that I did at UNC, which is online. And design schools are a fantastic advantage if you have the opportunity and the good fortune to be able to attend one if you're interested in design. I did not have that opportunity. I grew up in a haberdashery. Hey, sweetie, that's my baby sister. I grew up in a haberdashery in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and you know, my father and mother, our father and mother were my teachers. I had swatch books as a kid to play with. You know, we made forts out of suit boxes. I only pushed her into the cashmere sweater pile. But in fact, it was an advantage because I did not know what not to do. And so when I started out in New York designing clothes, to me it was so obvious that the key ingredient in every article of clothing was one thing, the common denominator, which was cloth. And so if you had beautiful fabric and you put it in a classic shape that was flattering and cool and made people look good, then that was timeless, and it was a good investment for people, and good investment meant you could wear it for a long time, and good investment meant that you could afford to invest a little more into it and have it be special. So not going to design school was important. That's our parents, that Mary and Maurice Julian, that our father came from Brockton, Massachusetts down to Carolina in 1933. And he was class of 1938 at Chapel Hill, opened Julian's in 1942, and this next year we're going to celebrate our 75th year on Franklin Street. But they were a dapper little couple there, you know. They were cool folks. And again, growing up in the store. Now, I guess I was 14 when it was apparent that if there was a really difficult jacket to get a tie for, or you know, you guys may not believe this, but students back in those days wore jackets and ties. Guys wore jackets and ties to class. You know, I just did a lecture at the Wilson Library in Chapel Hill, and you know, you bought 5 new sport coats for every season, for every fall and for every spring to wear to class, because you didn't want to be seen in the same sport coat and two different days in the week, or you wouldn't get that girl to say yes. But I didn't know that matching clothes would have implications later when it came to designing a room. You know, I look at a room, I look at everything really as if it's an article of clothing. If I'm designing a room, you know, the wall is the shirt, the sofa is the jacket, the floor are the trousers, the area rug is the sweater vest, and the throw pillows are the tie. It's just, you know, if it works together in an outfit like this, it works together in another way. The bottom right-hand corner here is our apartment in New York, which I'm kidding. That's where I really learned my craft, was out in the field and the factories. And that's in Scotland, in the borders of Scotland. And I went to all the best mills and the best knitters and the best weavers. The top left corner is raw wool, Scottish Shetland. The bottom left corner is taking those colors and blending them together to make something new that was made up of more than one color, and I was always fascinated by that. The top right-hand corner is a slide that I'm old enough to still call them slides. Is a photograph of an outfit from 1976, and the tightrope that I've tried to walk all my career has been to create products, whether they're furniture or fashion, that teeter-totter between something that's innovative and new and interesting to look at, but still timeless. And if you spent the enormous amount of money of $295 that handmade suit cost in 1976, which is about today's equivalent of about $3,000, and you could still wear it, you would have gotten your money's worth, I think. I'll go a little quickly through these. These are just some of the various things through the years of fashion in menswear. I added it up, and I've designed 108 different categories of products. Now, some of those products, like ties, we do anywhere from 150 to 200 a season. And so over the course of 40 years, you can add it up. And it's a lot of textile design. We have it archived in Connecticut and are trying to move it to Chapel Hill. Some of the women's wear pieces, which I'm not as much known for, although it had a pretty big impact in the mid-'80s when we came out with it. But entrepreneurial footnote, you're only as good as the people you're in business with. And I was in business with a bunch of crooks, and they ultimately stole the money, and guess whose name was on the door? They got off nothing, and I didn't get in any trouble, but I did with the stores, and my women's wear disappeared. Those are some of the various iterations of fashion labels that we've done. I was the first, and I'm very proud of this, to come up with, to actually design a popular priced version of my clothing, which was called Colors. Colors by Alexander Julian, and I used that because that was what people liked. That was a common denominator of what people liked about my work. My father hooked me up with this big manufacturer in 1980. I had moved to New York in '75, gotten nominated for a Coty Award in '76, won in '77, in '79, and in '80, and had fantastic editorial all over the world, but no real volume. And it was because everything was handmade, small quantities, and very exclusive. And there was a manufacturer, you know, the name was hot, and they tried to buy me, and I wouldn't sell. And I learned the benefit of mass production, and had this idea to combine my actual design work, not selling my name and letting them slap my name on things that I didn't do, but to actually sit down, roll my sleeves up, and design stuff that was mass produced. And the Arrow Shirt Company, Cluett Peabody, could take the fabric that I had designed for my collection, where we bought a few hundred yards of it at a very high price, and they were buying 1 million yards of it at a time, and they could buy the same fabric quality, the same design, for less than half the price. And that was what made a huge impact and helped change the way men dressed in America. We started sheets and towels back in 1980. You know, what do I know? So I did a runway show. You might not recognize me on the left there without my beard. We started furniture design, I guess in '94 was the first season. I tried for 10 years to get someone in High Point to let me design furniture. And I want to talk about intuition and feeling. You know, design, you can't dictate design. What designers do is listen a bit more acutely than most people. We focus on, with our special antenna, on feeling sort of the needs of what Neil Diffriant said, unthought of ways to meet unexpected needs. You feel this coming. And how do you define that in a little more realistic way? I would say that, having been successful in fashion, that the first time that I saw the look in someone's eyes whose taste I admired when they were talking about a piece of furniture or about their interior of their new apartment, that I saw that fire in their eyes, that gleam of excitement, that I would like to flatter myself to think that I was interested from the first time I saw that, but it may have taken 3 times. And I spent, and by the way, I don't blame you. It took me 10 years to get somebody to say yes, and then finally we had what was one of the largest successes in High Point history. The methodology that I used was based on the fact that furniture is not gender specific. It's not designed for male or female wearing or taste. It has to appeal to both. And so I decided to sort of reduce everything down to the little narrow overlap of iconography, of design work, of patterns and colors that are proven to appeal to both women and men simultaneously and that are timeless, like stripes and houndstooth in this, like tartan up on the right, buttons. That's the little cute as a button table with the sewing needle legs, and that's the bow tie table, a little bit of visual amusement that's still functional. We had an opportunity in the late 90s to design for Lowe's, the home improvement store here. And we worked, Meg and I, she's my not so secret weapon. It should be her name on the label, but I think she gets all the money, right? No, but, and we designed paint, wallpaper, throw pillows, curtains, flooring, just about everything you need for a room, and color coordinated it through that. I have to throw that in. Thank you for the lead in. I'm on the board of the textile school, very proudly on the board of the textile college at NC State. Thank you, Dr. Castle. And my grandson is a freshman at State. So we also cheer for any Carolina team except one. When after we're eliminated. I happen to be the only person in college sports to have to make it in the pros first to do the Charlotte Hornets uniforms. This was a little idea that Chris Mumford, sitting over here, and I got involved in. I had been approached by a doctor to redesign scrubs, and I won't go into all the details with that, but it was a very interesting project. It didn't work ultimately, but one day, we're both cyclists. He's a lot faster uphill than I am. I'm pretty good downhill. And we realized that our favorite thing to bike in were our scrubs, which were this high-tech knit material. And so we came up with a new concept for bicycle shirts that are for those that look better without shrink wrap. And then a project that we did for bicycles there. And it's all taking the same vocabulary and making the same kinds of sentence structure, but on different products, spinning it out. This is a project that's still in the works. We haven't gotten this off the ground yet, but it's based on a new flavor of an alcohol that I'm sure none of you imbibe, but it's trying to use what I'm known for in plaid and color, and using that as a leverage, as a way of identifying us with the public. This is a new line that my son Houston, who's unfortunately was detained and couldn't be here tonight, he graduated from Carolina a year and a half ago. He's 23, and he trained to be in the fashion business by getting a degree at Carolina in environmental science, and asked if he could try to do something. He grew up around my studio very much the way I grew up around my parents' store, and he started social media outreach, which I frankly didn't know what was. And if you read any of those things that I say on Instagram or on Facebook, 90% of the time that's him, not me. But I taught him my speak, and they are my photographs, and that garnered interest from six different companies around the world. And we're just about to launch this weekend in Charleston this new line of clothing, which is younger in attitude, but it's based on a new kind of textile design where that herringbone jacket on the left or this tweed vest on the right are actually lightweight cotton, which is digitally printed. And it really, it's so realistic you could fool them off, but it's, you know, I'm a Southerner, and global warming is real, and it's very hard to wear a tweed jacket anywhere south of the Mason-Dixon line in the fall. And this is going to be the answer to that, so you can sort of pay homage to the look, and everyone will think you're doing that, where in the meantime you're just chilling. And finally, I would like to show you where all my wool comes from. Can you bring the lights back up? I urge each of you who are interested in entrepreneurship or just being successful. You know, Dr. Castle, we spoke about this at our recent board meeting, and Chris Mumford and I have been talking about this for a long time to a lot of different people. But design thinking is your friend. Learning how to think creatively is what you need to do, no matter what you're going to do. You can learn something important from history and art history, because it does repeat itself. If there's a way to study aesthetics, I don't know if any of you know of one of my favorite musicians, Mose Allison. Played at my first fashion show, and I introduced the clothes in 1976 as clothes with just a little jazz. But Mose Allison has a degree in aesthetics. I mean, that's what he studied. And you know, learning about beauty, because there are truisms when it comes to beauty and balance that can help you. The things to watch out for are, as I said before, you can't be thin-skinned. You have to be ready to fail. You have to be ready. I may have said that before to the camera guy upstairs, sorry. But it was, you know, you beat your head against the wall 100 times when I first moved to New York in 75, and I almost threw it in and came back and worked for my father, and I didn't do it, because the 1001st time I got through, and then it happened. Now, does that make it easier? Sometimes. Does that make it easier every time? No. And there are still times that you will fail, but you have to believe in yourself. You have to have passion about what you want to do. You have to go after it, or else you're going to feel cheated all your life. You have to fulfill yourself. When Houston, my son came to our first market in New York, there was a guy that we work with, and as a licensee, we do our inexpensive colors line with him, and he said, "Houston, are you ready for rejection? Because this is a business of rejection." And he came to me about the third day, and he said, "God, was that guy right?" People say no, 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 and then finally you get a yes, and you use that as a window to get in. In 1977, when I got my first Cody Award, before I found out that Who's Who of America was a way to sell books, I was asked to give a quotation for Who's Who of America, and I said something then that I still will stand by today, that if you want to be successful in your endeavors, you have to liken your business endeavor to defensive driving. You have to be as intent or even more aware of what other people are doing wrong around you than what you're doing right to get where you're going. Because it's all those other people around you who don't support you or do something wrong that you've got to have your eyes and ears open to get it right, because ultimately it's you that pays. My mentor, Peter Barton, told me in the beginning that if a factory does something correctly, and he was talking about a clothing factory, it could be a software, anything. If a factory does it correctly 1,000 times, don't turn your back. Because the 1,001st time, they're going to do it wrong the moment you turn your back. And finally, years ago, I was asked to speak to a marketing class about entrepreneurship. And I had my assistant make, and I tried to find it. It's at Carolina somewhere, or else it's in the trash at Carolina somewhere. I had a sign made this big, and it had one big word in I had the word on our computer, I had the word actually spelled in money, and the word was greed. And around that, we put a big universal red no sign, because even after you start to make it or start to get there, watch out for greed, because it will suck you down the tubes. It is not your friend. Be aware, and a little success can go a long way. Thank you.